All right, here we are. It's EBW 2020 podcast, backstage at the IV Club, which is a first time for pretty much everybody, and meeting some really interesting people. And now we're sitting down with Vanessa Holgate. How you doing?
I'm awesome.
Okay, still
How are
got
you?
some energy left? I know you guys
I
are
do.
getting after it out there.
I do.
We hear screams erupting from the room periodically, which is very, very fun. We thought it'd be really fun to talk to you because what I gather, you are an expert with the lean startup, right? Is that true?
Bootstrapped. Sure. Yeah, I'm definitely a student of it. I mean, when I really first came across lean, it just resonated with me because I was like, this is what I've been doing for essentially, 10 years, but really trial by fire. And really the whole idea of lean is being able to take like a really big idea and then break it down into different steps, so you can really de-risk your business and you can really do big things with small steps. And so that can be, if you're tight on money, on resources, on knowledge within a space, then it's really just getting that idea out of your head in a really concise form, and then looking at what don't I know about this and really attacking the toughest parts first.
Give everybody watching and listening an example of some of the startups that you've gotten off the ground, and I know you've sold some. Give us a few examples just so they can kind of get a feel for you.
Okay, so I actually never in a million years thought I'd go into business. I have always been a bleeding heart. I say that the most formative experience of my life actually happened on a bridge in Hong Kong when I was 6 years old. And my parents were teachers. We're from Colorado. It was always hard for them to really support. Well, it was really just my dad, because my mom at the time didn't have a college degree, not until much later in life. And so we moved around a lot so they could get their best jobs. And we moved to Australia. As we were coming back, the cheapest way to get back to the States was actually on a Russian ship. So this is in 1986.
What?
So, and there was 4 of the ships, and the 3 previous are sank. So when we were departing Australia, our friends gave us a cake of a sinking ship, but that's pretty much how we had to get home. My grandfather was sick, and we would have stayed there, but there was just things going on at home. So anyways, I was in Hong Kong and crossing this bridge, and there was a woman who was holding her hand out. And it just stopped me in my tracks, because as such a young child, to see that, I'm like, where's her family? Why are her clothes threadbare? Just my mind was just racing, trying to figure this out. I was 6 years old.
Okay.
So, in a sea of people, 2 little blonde-headed kids, people would cross the street to touch our heads, packed, and so packed streets. But this just stopped me, and I can take myself back to that moment because it just had such a profound effect on me. Of really, I didn't understand poverty, but I did understand that I was different, and just by circumstance, I was born who I was, where I was, when I was, 1980, middle class America, Colorado, and from that I had so much more opportunity. So since then, it was always driven me to try to create opportunity. So it was really natural for me to be a bleeding heart and really want to go into the nonprofit space, NGO, microfinance. However, my life really kind of took this big turn. I fell in love and married a farmer, and that's how I got into ag and really into business. And there was just really big problems that his family was facing as a business.
What little girl now doesn't dream of marrying a farmer? Come on.
Right. I mean, I still come from like a small town, but I was still a city girl, in his mind. And so really, I received a scholarship from the Rotary. It was a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship, and ended up down in South America. And that's where we really started looking at, what are the opportunities in ag and emerging markets to be able to invest and start businesses. So we ended up using our own cash, just savings, and really just looking at, where are the projects that we can start. So we first started in Brazil, and then later ended up in Argentina, and ended up living there for about 8 years. Both of our kids were born down there. And along the way, there was just things that I needed in my own business that I had to figure out on my own, but then I realized other people needed those, and so I just created systems and just replicated what I was doing and was able to scale those up and spin them off into different businesses, different companies.
So the tools that you developed for what you went through could apply to anything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, at that time, I was just trying to figure it out, and it was really trial by fire. And I knew then we were also coming back up to the States, and I knew that I had to be able
by boat or?
No, well, we would go down by boat. Actually, it's a really great look for the repositioning cruises, and we would go on these like 2 week cruises to get all of our stuff down there because we're snowboarders and skiers, so we just have a ton of stuff with us. But no, we'd go by boat usually down there, but then fly back. But so I didn't know really that there was any real like framework or system. I was just trying to figure out what worked best for me because I really was trying to do everything by myself, and he had his specialty, but he was usually more, out negotiating contracts or doing some, he wasn't building the systems in the office and we didn't have any employees or whatever. Right. So I had to kind of figure it out from there to be able to grow and to reach the markets that we wanted to reach. And but then later on, then coming back to the States, my father-in-law was real sick. He had Alzheimer's, and there was still the family business, and they really needed some help. And it just, that I knew nothing about the business, the type of business that it was in, but it just, again, you're breaking down big problems into, like, how can I systemize this? How can I automate this? How can I then really look at growing it? And I would say the reason we were able to also help really turn around that company was, I don't think we do this enough as business owners, is really talking to customers. Like really talking to them and really understanding through a series of conversations, like how your company needs to change and grow. There's a lot of money thrown into advertising and research that I think is really superficial, but you can get so much done by really just sitting across the table or phone calls and really understanding. And I feel this goes back to the woman on the bridge, like having that deep empathy to really understand what a person, and sometimes I hesitate around the words like customers or clients or users, especially now going into tech. Users is a real hard word. They're people. Right. We're humans, and there's real like needs and motivations and desires, and I think sometimes we kind of pay lip service to that, but we don't dive deep into really having those conversations, and that I feel like that ability to really take the time, which time is money, but really take the time to talk to customers to really understand what they needed, help guide, each of these different businesses.
Do you think a lot of business owners or startups or even existing businesses, they're like, well, I know it, I do it, and they have tunnel vision?
Yeah.
And they're just not listening at all.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing is like maybe they're, listening but not really hearing what the customer wants, because you can really get blinded by, your great idea and having domain experience, expertise can be a double-edged sword, because yes, you can say, well, I know this market really well, so I don't need to do this research, but markets change too, and people change, and so I think having that continuous conversation is a crucial part of any business, larger, small, and I think as it's that paradox of we're more connected than ever, but we're also really disconnected, and I think we hide behind also.
Hang on, I gotta check my phone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But having, just not being able to really have those authentic conversations.
Yeah.
We're losing. I think we're losing that art, so, and business is an art and a science. So.
Now I'm gathering you've shifted from agriculture to technology.
Yeah, I'm going into tech now. Yeah.
You're going into technology. What does that mean?
I mean, I've always.
What's next week look like for you? Seriously, what are you working on?
Yeah. So, while I always had to use technology in order for me to do what I did, and really automation and I now am looking at really how we can use technology in management of money, and there's really. I'm spiraling around some different ideas, specifically around how we can provide better access to resources, both money and education for women. This is why I'm involved with EBW 2020. There's a couple of issues, again, through a series of conversations that I feel like I've come to narrow down some of the focus areas that I'd like to push forth. Connection is a big one. Women tend to work in silos. We tend to think we need to be experts or do everything like I did, even though I used technology to help me. I still probably didn't ask for the help or bring in outside people that now I'll know how to do, looking back, right? Hindsight's 2020. But really on the connection level, on cash flow is huge. We're really poor advocates when it comes to even just getting paid for the services, the products that we need, especially if you're in a service-based business. I think that's a challenge. And then really, ultimately to really make, big, massive global change, enabling those organizations that are doing the work on the ground to just be more effective with getting resources to them. I feel like the nonprofit model is broken as far as how we, how they look for funds, how they get the funds, how they then utilize the funds, how they report how those funds are used. And so I'm exploring a space on that side of things. So circling back to my nonprofit bleeding heart roots.
Well, and I know a lot of what's going on out here with EBW 2020 is the connections and the mentoring, and I think I know your answer to this question, but I want you to talk about the difference between, a lot of people think I just need to get money and my startup will take off. And what I'm definitely hearing from you, it's like, these connections are far more valuable than that money.
I think the main thing is, I like the adage, if you can solve a problem with money, you have an expense, not a problem. It's just, and money really just accelerates things. You put fuel on the fire, but it's really, I think it can blind people to what the true purpose is. I think that of what their business or what their impact is. I think connections are incredibly important. It's a balance because it's time or money and being able to balance those two things. But there was a Quora post that I came across a couple months ago, and it was essentially someone saying, the only reason you should go into business is for the money, like flat out, period, in a conversation. And it's just really interesting, and I think that has been a driver, not maybe to that extreme. 'Cause they were pretty adamant about that. There's absolutely no other reason. That's changing, and so really, focusing on, and what I want to focus on with my next venture is really matching the meaning with the money, because you need both. I was chatting with co-founder of Not For Sale, which is a phenomenal organization that is helping people get out of human trafficking situations through business, through creating business and through entrepreneurship. And one of the things we were talking about, and I said, was I feel in the for-profit world, they've figured out the how and the what. They're trying to figure out their why, really the meaning. Where then in the nonprofit world, they figure out their why, it's the how or the what. And it's those efficiencies and those the mindsets, the tools that I feel we have in the for-profit, and especially in the startup world, that are not they're not making it into that side of things. And there's just so much work, there's so much money even on the nonprofit side. it's just really looking at the best way, most efficient way to execute and use those resources.
You know, I'm curious to get your take on this bit, and it's a thin line when you always go, "Oh, women act this way in business, man." You know, but there's a reason there's a gathering of women here. Do you get the sense from hearing everyone's story and your own personal experience that female startups tend to have more purpose and meaning behind them? You know, you're kind of saying you kind of want to have all these things, but do you think a lot of the female concepts, ideas tend to have more purpose?
I think it's changing. I think it's a generational thing, but I do think overall, yeah, women definitely think differently than men. I've been in business with a lot of men, and we definitely think differently.
What's one of the biggest things that come to mind?
Oh my gosh.
I'm putting you on the spot.
You know, I think it's how, because I don't want to generalize, but in my experience, it's very kind of black or white, where I feel like there's a lot of shades of gray, and it's kind of like you can do it or you can't do it, where I'm like, no, we can work, you know, but it just takes a couple of different plans, you know, contingencies and thinking ahead. And I don't know, in my businesses, I really felt like there was, I never really thought that I would fail. Like it just wasn't really something I kind of thought about. It wasn't like a failure's not an option, you know, on the floor, but I just knew that I'd be able to figure it out. I see it's hard. I feel like it's more of a personality thing as far as being flexible, adaptable. I think women are amazing just because of what we can do. I mean, I believe that we're innately here to create things. And I kind of joke men are here to capture things.
There's a lot of biology with the creating things.
Exactly,
you know?
the creating and the capture, you know, it's you know, a joke, but right, there's always a little truth in a joke. So, you know, I don't know, I haven't actually worked with all women. I haven't, and it's something that I'm exploring now as well.
Okay.
You know, I was an athlete. We moved around a lot growing up. I didn't have a lot of close female friends. One of the reasons I love living where I do, which is in Silverton, Colorado, very small town, but you have to really have a purpose to live there. So the women that are there, I have had the closest relationships that I've ever had in my entire life, and I think that's really interesting. And there's a purpose there, and just like with EBW 2020, I think that there is, you know, this strong, you know, passion for having purpose in a business, or a drive too, because sometimes you can be driven towards something that you're compelled or obligated to do.
I think as a kid on a summer vacation, I panned for gold in Silverton.
Oh, probably. It's a famous place. It's a small town, but
it's a little mining town, right?
It is. It's a mining town. It's known worldwide. So
not where many entrepreneurs hang out, I don't think.
No, but that's what I'm trying to challenge as well. Is so you know, phenomenal entrepreneur, investor, thought leader Brad Feld, you know, wrote a book, essentially startup communities, and he has a premise that startup communities can start anywhere. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to challenge that.
There's something kind of cool about that. You know, I live in Austin, Texas, where everyone has a startup.
Yeah.
To where it's starting to feel like in LA, everyone's an actor.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, you got a startup, great. Okay,
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So going to an environment
Yeah.
where it's not everywhere maybe is good for it.
I think it's good. I think that, again, we draw a specific type of person. There's these other co-living, co-working spaces kind of popping up as far as to just go and really focus and almost that deceleration. And I do believe in that, because I think in I've lived in big cities, obviously very different pace, but I think that can be really distracting. And so, you know, even to draw people to a place like Silverton, we just finally got fiber optic. There's some really great opportunities. I do believe that it's really going to diversify the economy in the way that we need to. You know, mining, the train, that was our driver. Then tourism. I really feel now being able I work with remote and distributed teams. I can work from anywhere online. So for me, that is the place where I can focus. That's where I can get stuff done. And I've got young kids, and Silverton has one of the top schools in the country. I would say even the world. I mean, I really can't imagine them going to school anywhere else. And there is a focus on innovation and problem solving, and a lot of just the skills that I feel are just absolutely fundamental.
I'm picturing little
that.
South Park kids with their hoodies pulled down, quite honest.
It is, but it's gorgeous. And Boulder has absolutely exploded as well. And there's a quality of life, and I think that, yes, you need to have access, to capital, to people, but there's ways of doing that where you don't necessarily have to then sacrifice some of the other like personal life things. Especially, I think, especially for entrepreneurs, I like to say it's a great place, especially for like early stage companies, but later stage individuals, people. Later stage in life, have some life experience, have kids, and trying to make that decision between kind of the work or the family is a tough one. It's a tough one. So, we don't need hundreds or thousands of people, 10 entrepreneurs that want to live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And
that's very cool.
It's an opportunity there.
Vanessa, let's leave with one thing. It just kind of finish this. At one point, my startup was so bootstrapped that I blanked.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm just like all the like situations in my head, like running through them. I mean, I don't think bootstrap's not necessarily, I guess, when I think of that, I think of like the time where it's like completely out of money or resources. Like I've definitely learned how to live really, really frugal. But so it's not like a money thing. I think, bootstrapping is really about a process of strategy to be able to roll something out. That's how I view it. I guess I never really had access to money or thought about that side of things. So, for me, it was really just about taking one step in front of the other. I guess when we started in Brazil, we knew no one there. And we showed up and serendipitously met Roy Rogers in Rio, and he gave us the names of the people that we needed to go see. And 3 days by bus, we were in the middle of Brazil doing our thing, and that was a pretty crazy experience.
You really like slow means of transportation.
Slow and in a very isolated, remote places.
Yeah, you got a big train trip coming up.
I've always wanted to do the Trans-Mongolian, but so maybe when my kids just get slightly older, so they can remember it. When we'll probably start traveling again in about a year or so. I want my kids to have the same experiences I've had growing up.
I know that moment on the bridge.
The moment on the bridge.
Very cool. Vanessa Holgate, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.